Gender roles in marriage and family. Ever wondered how one's evolved in terms of social sciences and gender roles? How the roles are changed as well as stereotypes? This is what we will focus on in not only the Middle East, but North America as well. Let's start off by looking at the Middle East.
Anthropologists study functionalism, which attempts to understand cultures as a whole. Anthropologists tend to understand how marriage is in Middle East cultures. Marriage is a huge aspect in Middle East cultures. During the 20th century, the most important marriage tradition is a huge ceremony of getting married. There are many kinds of marriage used during the 20th century, starting off with arranged marriage. In Middle East, one of the most known ways of marriage was the arranged marriage, in which the family members takes a significant role in bringing the couple together. The bride and the groom are selected by a third person, rather by each other. Arranged marriage is different than the forced marriage. The couple see each other before marriage and have the right to make their own decision on the marriage alone. Reasons behind arranged marriage are due to the religious or cultural issues, protection of wealth, or the development of a political agreement. Another kind of marriage in Middle East is forced marriage, which is different than arranged marriage, because it is a marriage that is against the couple's will. A form of forced marriage is a shotgun wedding, which is caused due to an unplanned pregnancy. The father of the pregnant female starts threatening with a shotgun, in order for the male partner who caused the pregnancy not to escape, and leave the woman to raise the child alone. The main reason behind the marriage is to prevent the word from spreading and to bury the shame. Another kind of marriage is child marriage. It is a kind of marriage that is before the age of 18, for both boys and girls, but in some cases only one marriage partner is a child, and in most cases it's the female. Reasons behind child marriage is due to poverty, religious beliefs, or the fear of remaining unmarried. Africa has one of the highest rates of child marriage, under the age of 18 during the 20th century. Egypt is one of the huge examples that have child marriage, in most cases due to poverty. The idea of divorce is rare anywhere in Middle East, especially for women, since in Middle East they believe it will cause the family to fall apart, and the children will not be properly raised. Also, it would bring the shame to the woman's family if she got divorced. Family structure during the 20th century was the same over Middle Eastern cultures. Woman is in charge of the household, taking care of the children. Women were not allowed to work. Working was the man's duty. Men were involved in various aspects of life, including politics and all kinds of jobs that included hard work. Men were in charge of the income that keeps the house open, leaving him with the final decision and the power. Women used to give birth to many children in order for them to grow up and start helping their father.
Women now are equal to men, but they still have to receive the same harsh penalties if they have committed a crime. But now men are not the only providers. Women can also contribute in political life, such as ministers in Syrian, Jordanian, Egyptian, Iraqi, and Tunisian governments, and as vice president in Iran. Access to educational, professional opportunities, and salaries. Well-off women and women of lower stages nowadays have the right to divorce through the court of law and claim their own property. Children's lives are influenced by the number of parents and siblings that they live with, as well as by whether their parents are married or not, and both family members work. This will have a huge negative impact on how they are raised. Children who have a well-off family go into international schools and mostly study abroad. Children who live in poor areas go to government schools or work long hours in streets selling tissues, shining shoes, and picking up garbage, or they study the Quran in mosques. In the Middle Eastern culture, marriage is one of the most important aspects of a woman's life, because this is the day they look forward to. But among all the changes that have occurred, gay marriage is prohibited because religion beliefs deny it, and Middle Eastern abide by their religion.
Now let's change it over and look at North America. When we come and look at families and marriages, we must also look at how structuralism, more specifically binary opposites, play a role in how it shapes out to be in certain areas. Looking at marriage in the 20th century, you have to keep in mind that in the 1940s and early 1960s, it was not necessary for women nor men to study university or college, for the youth needed work experience rather than educational ones. With that being said, women working and having their own jobs was not an expected norm in the 20th century. Girls were expected to live with their parents until they married. This meant that regardless of whether they graduated from high school or not, they must live with their parents until someone asked for their hand in marriage. This would all happen before and while they are 20 years young. When a young couple marries around the age of 20, they shortly start to develop a family. Because the only job the North Americans expected out of their women was to care for their children and take care of the household, it was highly unlikely for them to remarry and get divorced. Not even 15% of North American women were employed in the 1940s, which gave little to no room for divorce or remarriages. The divorce rate in 1960 and 1997 never exceeded 20%, and the remarriage never exceeded 40%. This made a 20th century North American family more stable in their duties and raising the 2+ children they were expected to have. Things took a slight change when it came to the rules of marriage and family in the 21st century. The second half of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century, North American societies were now less strict about traditional structure of marriage and family. Because of the baby boom, many families felt the urge to work more than expected to provide for their families. Women now started to join the work fields. It is important to remember that this does not mean that they stopped caring for their household and children. Men were now also expected to care for the children, since it was not a full-time woman job anymore. This also meant that a high school education was not enough to get a highly paid job like it did in the 20th century. For example, a man with a high school education in the 1950s and 1960s had a job that paid enough to allow him to purchase a home, support a family, but not in the 21st century. As a high school graduate was lucky enough to land such a job, earned about 25% less than a comparable job would have been paid 20 years earlier. This also gave both men and women more time to delay marriage. Hence, 52% of societies, which made up the majority in the year 2000, were not married until the age of 30.
When we compare gender roles in marriage nowadays to the 20th century, we find that a huge social change has occurred. Historically, in North America, husbands had the role of a breadwinner and the wife as a caregiver. After the feminist movement, women began to have more rights, which led to jobs, and this changed the gender roles and marriage, because then, instead of women being the caregiver, now they could work, and the wife and the husband began to be equal. Instead of a woman having 80% of the responsibilities and man having the financial responsibilities, it all got closer to 50-50, equally the same. In the 20th century, there came the American women's suffrage movement, where it focused on the philosophy on equal treatment for women. This evolved to the current day feminist movement. World War II changed the role of a woman from primary caregivers and mothers who stayed at home to laborers who supported the American economy when all the men traveled to war. When this improved the economy, women's roles were changed in American homes. The feminist theory played a huge role in how the role of a woman changed sociologically. The feminist theory believed that women have traditionally been disadvantaged in society because men have discriminated against them.
Women had financial independence. In 2010, more American women were employed than men. Within the past 50 years, the divorce rate has dramatically risen, and so has gay marriage. In Mexico, according to the United Nations, the divorce rate has risen 0.3 to 0.8 per thousand since the 1970s. The United States itself has a divorce rate of 3.6 per thousand people. There was a huge social change in marriage. The family structure is not what it used to be, and this has many implications on our future generation. Studies have shown that along with the higher divorce rates, according to psychologist Erik Erikson, Children become at a loss in regards to parental figures, which causes them to resort to the media as a parent or guide. This shows that the family structure we have known in the past will continue to disintegrate in the future. The concept of family keeps changing and becoming less and less important. In contrast to the Middle East, marrying your cousin is socially unacceptable in North America, but there are other types of marriage that are socially acceptable in the United States but not in the Middle East. For example, lesbian marriage, gay marriage, bisexual marriage, transsexual marriage, and basically all same-sex marriage is legal in all of Canada and even some parts of the United States. However, it is completely socially and legally unacceptable in the Middle East.
These are the changes and evolution that we've seen throughout time in North America and the Middle East. So we thank you for watching.